Welcome to another episode of Fill in the Blank. I'm here with Chris Rourke wearing the Pokemon shirt.
Hell yeah, dude.
I
Got
love
my
it.
birthday on it and everything.
Torchic.
Torchic, my favorite Pokemon.
Okay, so do you know what we're talking about today?
Operation Paperclip.
It was also originally known as Operation Overcast, which I just kind of preference as the capture of scientists of the Nazi regime. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of, do you even know what Paperclip really was?
I know that we took Nazi scientists and hired them to become American scientists.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Well, my initial kind of perception of it was everybody got a little group of Nazi scientists and actually used them in our own developing research. And we actually forgave them for their war crimes because their research was going to benefit us in the long run. So we're like, we can't deny that you've done some messed up things to get to where you've gotten, but we need the information, so we don't have to do it ourselves. So we don't have to be the Nazis. We can be just the good guys. So what happened?
Plus, these guys had tech way back then that was like
they invented
beyond.
flying saucers, dude. That's the weird thing. They created some of the first flying saucers. Our whole NASA space program, you know, the space shuttle, the little thing you see, that little white, if I say space shuttle, you know what I'm talking about. That white plane thing. That's a Nazi.
The logo for
that's
NASA.
a Nazi invention.
Wow.
Yeah, most of our all of our space program goes into Nazi.
There's also papers out there. You know, we might not have facts on it right now, but we can find them for another podcast. But apparently they made it to fourth dimensional travel at one point to attempt teleportation.
I believe it. I think it was called Project Blue or something. We were working with being able to bend gravity. So it's like it's not out of the realm of possibility.
All right, well, viewers, now you got something else to look forward to.
Another fill in the blank. Okay, so Operation Paperclip was a secret program of the Joint Intelligence Operations Agency, largely carried out by special agents of Army CIC, in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians, such as Wernher von Braun and his V-2 rocket team, were taken from Germany to America for U.S. government employment primarily between 1945 and 1959. Many were former members and some were former leaders of the Nazi Party. The primary purpose for Operation Paperclip was U.S. military advantage in the Soviet-American Cold War and the Spartan race. The Soviet Union was more aggressive in forcibly recruiting more than 2,200 German specialists, a total of more than 6,000 people, including family members, with Operation Oshkavin during one night on October 22nd, 1946.
What a name.
Right? What's with these operation names, man? They have some really, there's one called Operation Dragonborn.
Is it to release the game of Skyrim?
It has nothing to do with dragons. That was the first one I clicked. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff established the first secret recruitment program called Operation Overcast on July 20th, 1945, initially to assist in shortening the Japanese War and to aid our post-war military research. The term Overcast was the name first given by the German scientists' family members for the housing camp, where they were held in Bavaria. In the late summer of 1945, the JCS established the JIOA, a subcommittee of the Joint Intelligence Community, to directly oversee Operation Overcast and later known as Operation Paperclip. The JIOA representatives included the Army's Director of Intelligence, the Chief of Naval Intelligence, the Assistant Chief of Air Staff, and a representative from the State Department. In November 1945, Operation Overcast was renamed Operation Paperclip by Ordnance Corporations, which is also known as United States Army, who would attach a paperclip to the folders of those rocket experts whom they wish to employ in America.
There they go. Okay.
So they're attaching a ribbon for participation, you get a freaking paperclip attached to you. That's turning someone into property for sure.
Yeah, honestly, but I mean, I was wondering where the paperclip came from this whole time.
Well, now you know.
There we go.
Clipped paper clips to people. That's a dumb way to think of it. I would call it like Nazi research for space or something like
Yeah.
that, rather than paperclip.
Operation Stargate.
Yeah, right. Or Starfish Prime. In a secret directive circulated on September 3rd, 1946, President Truman officially approved Operation Paperclip and expanded it to include 1,000 German scientists under temporary, limited military custody. So some of the things that I wrote down that I looked up that actually interest me was Hitler had a whole arsenal of nerve agents we had no clue about.
Nerve agents?
Nerve agent, like toxic gas, like mustard gas stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
He had a whole supply from all these different chemicals that we haven't even thought of or anything like that. He actually was working on a bubonic plague weapon that the Pentagon realized we need that. Like, that needs to be in our grasp. If anybody's going to have a bubonic plague, like, imagine a gun that shoots out the bubonic plague. Like the Black Death coming back.
That's pretty shitty, though, because, I mean, one shot of that's going to destroy entire cities and shit. Like, the bubonic plague just doesn't go away.
Somebody would get a little bit pissed off.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is, once the bubonic plague's out, it's like Pandora's box.
Yeah,
Once you open it's not getting it back in.
It's like you can quarantine the city off, but people are still going to escape. You know?
So, do you know anything about Apollo space program?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the Nazi scientists were used in the development of the Apollo space program.
Dang.
We're going to learn a little bit more about, too.
The space race was developed by Nazis. Fun fact.
So, at the time, most of this operation was leaked in the Life magazine with a series of photos that caused the public and other countries to spark an outcry. So basically, other countries were like, whoa, 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 whoa. They got scientists? I want scientists. Mm-hmm. And people were like, wait a minute. We're having Nazis in our country? We're supposed to be killing those guys.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the Ozenberg list. This is part of Operation Paperclip. In the later part of World War II, Nazi Germany found itself at a logistical disadvantage, having failed to conquer the USSR with Operation Barbarossa, the Siege of Leningrad, and Operation Nordlicht, and the Battle of Stalingrad. That failed conquest had depleted German resources, and its military-industrial complex was unprepared to defend the Reich, basically, Greater German Reich, against the Red Army's westward counterattack. By early 1943, the German government began recalling from combat a number of scientists, engineers, and technicians. They returned to work in the research and development to bolster German defenses for a protracted war with the USSR. The recall from frontline combat included 4,000 Rocketeers returned to Pneumatied in northeast coastal Germany. Overnight, PhDs were liberated from KP duty. Masters of Science were recalled from orderly service. Mathematicians were hauled out of bakeries, and precision mechanics ceased to be truck drivers. And that was the head Fuhrer at the time, Dieter K. Husel, who gave that quote. And then the Nazi government's recall of their now useful intellects for scientific work first required identifying and locating the scientists, engineers, and technicians, then asserting their political and ideological reliability. Werner Ozenberg, the engineer-scientist heading at the, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. If you want to see this word, it's Wervorscher Germanschaft.
Oh, yeah, no, that's like, that's at least 12 syllables.
In parentheses, yeah. That's like 20. In the parentheses beside it, it literally says Defense Research Association. So we're going to call it that.
There we go.
Well, recorded the names of the politically cleared men to the Ozenberg list, thus reinstating them to scientific work. In March 1945, at Bonn University, a Polish laboratory technician found pieces of the Ozenberg list stuffed in a toilet. The list subsequently reached M16, who transmitted it to U.S. intelligence. The U.S. Army Major Robert B. Staber, chief of the Jet Propulsion System section at the Research and Intelligence Branch of the U.S. Army, used the Ozenberg list to compile the list of German scientists to be captured and interrogated. Wernher von Braun, Germany's premier rocket scientist, headed Major Staber's list. So this list was actually a way of every scientist and engineer in the Nazi program to be called back from the front lines to help the development research. So if anybody was important, the Nazis put out this list, so you know this is everyone that is important to our research and development, get them off the lines and get them back working on stuff. So we just use that list to find where are the good Nazis? Where are the ones we can use that have the brains, the ones that can be easily manipulated?
So they kept a list. So what they would do is pretty much like in times of, okay, no real research is going on, we'll put you to use somewhere else.
Well, they had the list saved.
Of everyone.
They had the list saved, like in an archive, and the dude tried to stuff it in a toilet, and some agents found it in the toilet. I want to know the agents, the M16 agents that were working that.
Yeah.
That, like, some dude's, like, going to take a dump. Why is the toilet clogged? And he goes to fix the pipe, and he just looks back there. Oh, my God, this is a list of all the scientists.
Yeah. This is very valuable information.
Hopefully he wasn't just, like, rooting through the guy's toilet, like, looking through the guy's shit or something.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're, like, specially trained, like, that's somewhere to look to see, like, okay, well, where would someone
the answer is
dump
in the poo.
sensitive information?
All the answers are in the poo. So in Operation Overcast, Major Staver's original intent was only to interview the scientists, but what he learned changed the operation's purpose. On May 22nd, 1945, he transmitted to the U.S. Pentagon headquarters Colonel Joel Holmes' telegram urging the evacuation of German scientists and their families, as most important for the Pacific War effort. Most of the Ozenberg list engineers worked at the Baltic Coast Germany Army Research Center, developing the V-2 rocket. After capturing them, the Allies initially housed them and their families in Landshut, Bavaria, in southern Germany. Beginning on July 19, 1945, the U.S. JCS managed the captured ARC Rocketeers under Operation Overcast. However, when the Camp Overcast name of the scientist quarters became locally known, the program was renamed Operation Paperclip in November 1945. Despite these attempts at secrecy, later that year the press interviewed several of the actual scientists that were developed into the program. So let's talk about the capture and detention of these people. So early on, the United States created the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee. This provided information on targets for the T-forces that went in and targeted scientific, military, and industrial installations and their employees for their know-how. Initial priorities were advanced technology such as infrared that could be used in the war against Japan, finding out what technology had been passed on to Japan, and finally to halt the research in general. A project to halt the research was codenamed Project Safe Haven, and it was not initially targeted against the Soviet Union. Rather, the concern that was the German scientists might emigrate and continue their research in countries such as Spain, Argentina, or Egypt, all of which had sympathized with Nazi Germany. In order to avoid complications involved in the emigration of Germany and all the German scientists, the CEOs was responsible for scouting and kidnapping high-profile individuals for the deprivation of technological advancements in nations outside of the U.S. So Project Safe Haven was actually the complete cutoff of Germany from any trade and having basically to rebuild Europe. You know that happened when they had to pay reparations and do all this stuff, which they still owe money. They owed like 500,000 or 500 million. Something.
Probably million, dude. Because
we're talking about government.
Yeah, exactly.
So much U.S. effort was actually focused on Saxony and this other place called Thuringia, which by July 1st, 1945 would become part of the Soviet occupation zone. Many German research facilities and personnel had been evacuated to these states, particularly from the Berlin area, fearing that the Soviet takeover would limit U.S. ability to exploit German scientific and technical expertise, and not wanting the Soviet Union to benefit from said expertise. The United States investigated an evacuation operation of scientific personnel from Saxony and Thuringia, issuing orders such as, on orders of military government, you are to report with your family and baggage as much as you can carry tomorrow noon at 1300 hours, which would be known as Friday 22nd, June 1945, at the town square in Bitterfield. There is no need to bring winter clothing. Easily carried possessions such as family documents, jewelry, and the like should be taken along. You will be transported by motor vehicle to the nearest railway station. From there you will travel on to the west. Please tell the bearer of this letter how large your family is. So basically they would administer light drugs coupled with hypnosis to create a trance in which it was held approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes. This is how they would trick these scientists into getting into these areas, like with their families and stuff. They would use a form of hypnosis.
So this is not voluntarily coming into.
They're basically sending you a letter saying, take anything that's valuable to you, your jewelry, your families, your whatever you got to take, but you can still be able to carry, and you're coming with us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they sent it out in a letter, and probably some dude read it to you, and they probably had troops behind them, so it was probably pretty menacing. So it's not really like you have a choice here. You're coming with us, take what you need to go, and be ready at the car in like 1,300 hours.
Yeah, and I mean, that's perfectly acceptable because they are technically war criminals still, so it's like, you can kind of go to whoever you want to and do that. if it's like a country full of war criminals, like after World War II, the Russians were just raping and pillaging all over.
Well, basically 2 years later, by 1947, the evacuation operation had nettled an estimated 1,800 technicians and scientists, along with 3,700 family members. Those with special skills or knowledge were taken to detention and interrogation centers, such as one codenamed Dustbin, to be held and interrogated in some cases for months. So this is what I was talking about, interrogation, how they would get them to come with.
Mm-hmm.
They would actually administer like light drugs to the person, and they would try and hypnosis them for an hour and 40 minutes is usually the time of hypnosis.
Damn.
So a few of the scientists were gathered up in Operation Overcast, but most were transported to villages in the countryside, where there were neither research facilities nor work. They provided stipends and forced to report twice weekly to the police headquarters to prevent them from leaving. The Joint Chiefs of Staff Directive on Research and Teaching stated that the scientists should be released only after all interested agencies were satisfied with the desired results that were obtained from them. So he believed, I guess, that they should be kind of released, like after they gave us all the valuable information, but the government was like, all right, they just told us all of our secret, like everything we're going to use,
Mm-hmm.
We might need more information, so it's probably good to still have them, and at the same time, we can't just send them back out now, like they're an open source, they're a leak now, so they're going to go and tell somebody that, the government's let us live.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on November 5th, 1947, the Office of Military Government of the United States had jurisdiction over the western part of occupied Germany. They held a conference to consider the status of evacuees, the monetary claims that the evacuees had filed against the United States, and the possible violation by the U.S. of laws of war or rules of land, which the Germans referred to as General Walsh's Urwald Program, also known as the Jungle Program. However, this program never matured. In 1948, the evacuees received settlements of 69.5 million Reichsmarks from the U.S., a settlement that soon became severely devalued during the currency reform that introduced in the Deutschmark as the official currency of Western Germany. Do you know anything about that?
I know that they went through a lot of currencies back then, so it kind of sucks to get 69 million. I mean, it wasn't worth much back then. 69 million, like the currency in Germany, pre-Hitler was low, during Hitler high, post-Hitler low. So it's like...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 69 million was like nothing, pretty much. Like sometime, like before Nazis came into power, I think it was like $4,000 to get a slice of bread.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it was worth nothing. Like,
you know how many $1 tacos you can get for $4,000?
4,000.
Well, you gotta think tax, so probably like
3,000.
990, 3,990.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If it was like,
it's gonna
if it was
add
6 cents.
Every taco. It's gonna be
just
around
about
that, maybe a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's like when you win the Powerball. I'm getting 6.5 million. You're getting like 2 million, dog, because they're taking a lot out.
Well, if it's like, I remember it was like 8 million, you would still get 4 million something. Because they take like 50%.
I want the whole bit, bruh.
I know, but they're not going to give that to you. Government has to take its slice everywhere, man.
You always got to take a piece. Government. You get a death tax, too. You know that?
Yeah.
When you die.
You don't even get spared for dying. You're paying taxes all the time.
Nothing escapes America. John Gimbel concludes that the United States held some of Germany's best minds for 3 years, therefore depriving the German recovery of their expertise. After further research of all the Nazi experiments on people, such as drawing and ice. Okay. So this is what I wanted to get specifically on. How they would get the information out of these people with interrogation skills. Do you want to know their insane interrogation techniques? They would drown them in ice baths. They would yank their gold teeth out. Yeah, apparently a lot of these guys had a lot of gold teeth. I guess that was like a certain tactic in the war. It helped, like they would hide stuff under it or something.
Oh, well, that, and also you can easily identify a real German then, I guess. Like, if all the scientists had gold teeth and an unknown scientist comes in, it's like, oh, that guy's a spy.
They would also explode bodies in a high altitude chamber. So you know when those people go under the sea and they have to come back up and be depressurized or what is that? When they get the bends.
Oh yeah.
When they put them in a chamber and trying to stabilize their gravity. It's the same thing with astronauts. When they come down, they put you in a chamber to stabilize basically your own gravitational. And this is what they would do. They put them in these altitude chambers and they turn it all the way up, and then they explode these people.
Jesus Christ. Well, you're not getting much info out of them then.
Well, it'd be a torture thing. Your eye's about to pop out of your head. You're like, all right, I'll tell you anything. And next thing you know, it's like, okay. I mean, they're scientists, so it's not like, they're nerds. They're not going to be like the toughest of the tough.
Yeah, exactly.
They also tried to master spaceflight by using those altitude chambers as well. And they would also try and resurrect them. So what they would do is if someone died during interrogation, they were really into like the Frankenstein stuff, like bringing people back from the dead. Like that was a big thing. A lot with England was into that too with the Sherlock Holmes era, like the Victorian era. That was a giant thing, trying to bring reanimate a corpse or something around Frankenstein. Those stories kind of ran around. Well, Nazis did a lot of that. They would experiment with trying to bring people back to life, just using electroconvulsive therapy and being able to get the nerves to fire off real quick. So like the funny thing is like your fingers will move, but you're not actually alive. It's just they're hitting a certain frequency in your body's nervous system that's making those nerves kind of light up again. Yeah.
The scary thing is if you put a chip on someone's brain, you can do that same thing. Like we're getting close to it. Like paralyzed people can move their arms and stuff now if you hook up a computer and a chip to their head.
Yeah. Would you get a chip if you could walk again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, imagine if someone could hack that chip. Turn you into a super robot.
Doesn't matter. I mean...
RoboCop, everyone's like, I'd love to be RoboCop. Be like, yeah, but he didn't really have a whole lot of control over himself until like towards the end of the movie. So you got to go through all that shit to get free. How do we get off Paperclip to RoboCop?
Because of fucking Nazis, man.
Nazis. In May 1945, the U.S. Navy received in custody Dr. Herbert A. Wagner, the inventor of the HS-293 missile. For 2 years, he worked at the Special Devices Center at Castle Gould in Hempstein House, Long Island, New York. In 194-7, he moved to the Naval Air Station Point Mugu. So a lot of these people, this is all their arrivals. There's a long-ass list of important scientists that, that just really, like, we literally, to make sure that they did not get caught, like after they gave us all the research, we basically sent them to another country, and that country used them for their preference. Like, we had to share with the Allies. Yeah. The whole thing was once Germany got caught with all this crap, like what they did, everything they did, Poland and all that, we cut them off completely. Every country did. No trading with Germany. We got to pay all this money back. We're basically not going to help you rebuild. You have no money, no resources, and you're never going to be a powerful person again. We cut off their army restrict, so they can't have a giant army. They can't have nuclear weapons. You can't have anything. Yeah. So at this point, they're all suffering. They all hate it. And I've had one of my buddies on the podcast has been to Germany. He said they're really open and really friendly there. They want you to like not think about the bad stuff. And it's like, it kind of sucks because they understand they made a mistake in history. But we've made plenty of mistakes too.
Did they make the mistake in history though?
Well, they lost, so yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, did those people currently living in Germany?
No, I'm saying history's written by the winner. If they would have won, then it wouldn't have been a mistake. The United States would have been a mistake. That would have been a technological advancement if the war went the complete opposite way. And there was only key subtle like battle things and like different little like skirmishes that chalked us up to leading into the war.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and most of them were false flags too, because America just wanted to maintain its image while getting involved in the war.
Well, while we were fighting in the war with them in World War II, we literally would drop our own guns and pick up theirs because their guns were better than our guns. We were like McDonald's. Bill Burr talks about this. We were like McDonald's, where we had one of their best inventions, like the Panzer tank or something.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Yeah,
those things were ridiculous.
That crazy tank. Well, for every one of those they had, we had 5. Not of that same tank, but 5 tanks. Yeah. So we're outnumbering them. So our gun manufacturing was out of the, like, they had 1 gun, we had 100 coming. You know, they couldn't supply all these badass weapons to their troops.
That's what we showed them on D-Day, was like, because they had, that beach was
Operation
fortified.
Overlord is part of the name too. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, that's insane. But like, on D-Day, we had that, like, they had that beach. There was no way, statistically, that they would lose. But then we just started sending 18-year-old bodies in and watching them fall until we eventually pushed out. And it's like, you show all the rest of the countries, like, yeah, we're insane enough to fucking do that. And all of a sudden, no one's going to touch you. Like, we have officially scared the Germans on that day, because they're like, these guys are absolutely nuts. Like, who would do this to their own people?
Well, like, China, that population, it's like, at that point, it's like, when you're that crowded, it's like, all right, everybody's signing up for the military, no matter what your age is. Because, like, most of their, like, they still have one of the largest armies in the world, is because, even they count the retired people, because the retired people will still go into battle. It's like that whole samurai code thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's the honor system.
Von Braun, actually, in March 1945, conscripted 2 friends to stash his most important research in an old abandoned mine. He knew eventually Germany would fail and he could use the research to broker a new life in the United States. The thinking behind this was, no matter how bad the atrocities were eventually discovered, that any country looking for power would not refuse the technological advances of the Nazis. Mm-hmm. I wrote that down for myself because that just shows, like, he helped with our space program. Like, this guy was a major influence to the whole NASA thing. Now, he literally knew that they were going to want this research. So he was like, store this for me. If I get captured, I will have this to hold over their head. Then that's how he got forgave for his war crimes. We totally forgot what he did because we used his research.
You see, the thing is, again, going back to that, the winners write the books.
But is that like, morally right that we should see that? Shouldn't he have to pay for his crimes rather than just give us research?
See, no, but he was thinking, he's not even, this dude, you could tell right then and there, he's thinking ahead. He's like, I really don't care about Nazis. I don't care about what's going on. I care about me. I'm number one. I currently have been born in Germany. Shit luck, because now we're losing the war. The winners of the war, though, are going to come. And when they do, I need a plan. You know, like, is he so wrong for not even believing in the ideology?
He's into the research.
He's into... You're offered $1 million grant back then to do whatever research you want. Who are you going to go with? You're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to do my own research," or "No, I'm going to do the research for the Nazis."
So, like, the whole idea of the government coming in, like, you're especially interested in going into Mars and inhabiting Mars.
Exactly.
That's what you want to do. Okay, let's say that's what your interest is, and the government comes in, funds it all, gets you there, and then they're like, "All right, now when we go to Mars, we're going to blow up the Earth, so we can just have Mars." So you're like, I threw all this time into the research. Yeah, well, I still want to work on the program. It's my baby, but I don't like what you're doing. I have no power here now because you guys have taken over so much. But I'm going to save all the research and keep to get me out of trouble when this all backfires.
Yeah.
So that was the whole idea.
And also, I mean, like, it goes to, like, some of the soldiers, too. Like, obviously there were some that knew what they were doing. But, like, most of the scientists, most of the soldiers, they were just kind of there, you know. It was like the popular thing to do at the time for the soldiers. For the scientists, again, it goes back to the, I want a project, and the government's willing to fund anything at this point. You know, it's hard. It's hard to really judge an entire group of people. That's why it's like, when we say, oh, every German still has to pay for this, it's like, dude, none of the Germans who are around today were were part of that. You know, how are we going to say that you guys still have to suffer?
Yeah.
Because of something that people did beforehand.
Well, we just don't want them ever rising to where they were before.
Yeah, they seem to have a history of doing it, and I don't blame.
I mean, you do 2 world wars.
Yeah, yeah. There's a history of
Fool me
violence
once,
there.
shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on... Wait, is it the other way around?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice,
Oh,
shame on me.
yeah,
Because
you
it's
go.
like, I should have learned, But,
Shit.
yeah. It's a really gray area subject because it's hard to put your finger on to say, like, yeah, all Germans are bad because of these two things that happened
That's
that
like
they
just
weren't
hating.
involved.
That's like hating all Asian people if one
Yeah,
of them piss you off.
like,
It's
oh,
racism.
I'm gonna blame Japan because we were at war with them at one point. Like, no. Like, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Some people do that.
I know.
Well, some scientific accomplishments. Wernher von Braun was the chief architect of the Saturn V, I think, is just the V, launch vehicle, the key instrument in getting the man to the moon.
Mm.
Adolf Busemann was the mind behind the swept wing, which improved aircraft performance at high speeds. So let's talk about some controversies and investigations. Several of the Paperclip scientists were later investigated because of their links with the Nazi Party during the war. Only one Paperclip scientist, George Ricky, was formally tried for any crime, and no Paperclip scientist was found guilty of any crime in America or Germany.
Mm.
So maybe they erased his files?
Well, he was probably one of the ones that cooperated.
Well, this is a controversy. This is what people think. Like, there's some articles like, there's this scientist, and everyone's like, we've looked up, we've never have a record of that scientist. So, maybe is the government deleting that record, or...
I'm thinking it's more of like the ones that they had to torture, right?
Like creepypasta meme, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Story.
But the ones that we had to torture were probably actually into the whole Nazi thing. But the ones that would willingly give info, like that guy who stored it away on purpose, then they would probably get their records erased immediately because it's like, okay, so these guys weren't really into it. They were just into it for the science. One of those things.
So after the initial approval of the program, President Truman for 16 months was indecisive on the program that happened in 1963. Truman recalled that he was not in the least reluctant to approve Paperclip. That because of relations to Russia, this had to be done and done for war.
Yeah, well,
we do chalk a lot of stuff up to war. Well, they helped us win the space race. Once we got Nazi scientists on our side, and we're doing that, they have Nazi scientists too, but ours were just better. We had bigger paper clips, and
we probably had the money to put towards it too, because as you know, the USSR was kind of...
We were already losing from Russia. Like, they were already sending some stuff into space. They were already up there before we were. Well, we landed on the moon, apparently. The whole idea of faking the moon landing?
Yeah.
I have an article on that, too. We can do a fill in the blank on that, man. It goes in with a whole bunch of bases for the moon and all this stuff that we had planned as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we hit the moon,
Just
but
not
we didn't broadcast
at that
it.
time.
We didn't broadcast it because there's no way that we could... We still have trouble sending data from one cell tower to another.
The footage apparently has been proven fake.
Yeah.
And it comes from, like, some scene or something, and that they filmed a while back or something for some movie that never got made.
The dude who made 2001: A Space Odyssey was making realistic-looking space way back when, so I mean...
How far do you want to believe?
Yeah, exactly.
So, wrapping it all up, I kind of want to talk about the impacts to the U.S. This is all the stuff I wrote down. All aerospace medicine was born from German research. The research eventually led to travel to space and get to the moon. So the captured scientists were pouring through the documents of Dr. Eugene Hagen, who was a high-ranking Nazi specialized in weaponizing deadly viruses. They were looking for evidence of the Third Reich's progress in atomic and biochemical warfare, but instead found evidence of devastating carnage. This is a real quote from Hagen. Of the 100 prisoners you sent me, 18 died in transport. Written in a memo dated November 15, 1943, only 12 are in a condition suitable for my experiments. I therefore request that you send me another 100 prisoners between 20 and 40 years of age who are healthy and in a physical condition comparable to soldiers. So this Dr. Hagen guy, I want to do a separate thing on him. He is, nuts, dude. This guy was the one that was in charge of hypnotizing people and doing all this stuff. Like, he was the one that was like, this is what we're going to do to interrogate these people. He basically taught the soldiers how to interrogate. And
so he was doing psychology experiments illegally, like, not based on humanity standards.
Not just interrogation, torture. Like,
well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, the torturous part is, like, any sort of psychological... We can't really test psychology anymore because... Yeah. It is dehumanizing people. So
Well, there's many forms of psychology. There's physical torture, like physical psychology, where you're impacted by an event.
mhm.
There's like it goes way down the line, and there's torture methods where I wouldn't even really call it torture, but experiments that the government's done where they give 21 nurses a certain level dosage of medicine, and it's the same thing that goes with what's that, the milligram experiment, one we had to do on being told by your authority or superiors to do something, being told it's a lethal dose and giving it to your patient because you were told to do so. 20 out of those nurses did it, one did not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because
It wasn't, but she did the morally right thing not to kill the patient with the lethal dose. Now, it was just a sugar pill, but at the same time, it's like, we tell you this is PCP, this is meth.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to take this, and a certain amount's going to kill this patient. Or you're going to give that to him, and he's going to kill him. Are you going to do it because I'm your superior? You're going to be like, no. At least I'm going to be like, no, but some people follow that order. And that's what those 20 nurses did, and that one didn't.
Well, see, like that's another thing, though. You would never really know that you would say no until you were until you were put in the situation. You know, because in everyone's best self-interest is to say yes, because you don't want to lose your job.
Well, if the government was going to tell you, I want you to torture this scientist to get this information out, and if you don't, then you're going to suffer, like your family and everything's going to suffer, you're going to do it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's the same thing a lot of these scientists would use as an excuse to get out of their crimes for not saying. Like, we were afraid for our lives. We got too into the research, and we cared more about the research than we did for the actual thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, the whole aspect of this, like, how do you really forgive someone for something so crazy, you know? And it's just it happens due in the situation you're placed in, the tools that, you know, what's going to get you out of the trade. If someone's threatening your family, saying, you know, your family's going to die if you don't do research for us, you're going to do everything you possibly can to get that research done. And it happens a lot when governments get into a state of power, and that's what this government, you know, the Nazis did, and they thought what they were doing, a lot of them thought they were doing it right, a lot of them might have been scared, and then, you know, when they came over here, we didn't treat them any better. We threw them in small rooms, these interrogation camps with their families. You think that's that thing America's doing out of the kindness of their heart? No, they're shoving you in a room with like 8, 12 people in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like a small closeted space, like you're not comfortable at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Dustbin was literally a name of some of the interrogation detention centers, and I saw pictures of them, dude. They were terrible, man. So, what's your whole takeaway from Operation Paperclip?
I think it was a smart move, and you know, like they were war prisoners, so they could really do whatever they wanted to with them, as long as it stayed within the bounds of humanity. But the whole idea of taking in super smart people from other countries that would have otherwise been working on research in that country, still trying to restabilize it. Maybe they had economists who were also their scientists there. We took them away, so now they're going to have a harder time stabilizing, you know, all that jazz. So
Even though the initial plan came from Russia, Russia actually had the initial plan. That hard name I pronounced in the beginning,
yeah,
that was Russia. That was their initial plan. We found out about it. Like, wait a minute, we got to have our own plan project to
really
get some of these scientists. Russia's got scientists. I want scientists.
That's pretty good.
Well, you know, a lot of good ideas that America has benefited from haven't really been our own.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all about the Cold War. Like, we had spies figure that stuff out, so then it's like, you know, now we gotta get more.
I guess the main question is for everyone, what would you do to win the war? Like, what do you chalk up to being just sacrifice of war? Guess it would be different for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I don't think war is a smart idea, but
You know, like if someone's threatening your family, you're gonna do it for your family. But if someone doesn't like their family, you know,
that's true.
go ahead,
Yeah,
kill me, mom.
exactly.
I don't care.
Exactly.
Well, anybody looking to find out more about Operation Paperclip or Operation Overcast, I suggest digging into it. It's definitely, you'll find a lot of stuff. One article or one podcast wouldn't even cover it. It's something that it really, you keep finding different rabbit holes to go down into. And take away from this, you know, from what we got, I think it was definitely beneficial, and it seems like Chris is in agreement there. I definitely believe that they should still pay for their crimes, like pay a certain amount of money or have to rebuild a certain amount of, Germany. And, not calling out Germany because, you gotta love a good schnitzel. Stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks for being on, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.